Welcome to Landing America. I hope you're having a beautiful day. On today's episode, I decided to talk to you about buying the tickets. I want to give you some advice, maybe some travel tips, share my experiences with traveling and flying to America. So, let's get started. To buy a ticket to America, I recommend you to use apps such as Kiwi, Kayak, Skyscanner. My favorite one is Kiwi because it is user-friendly, transparent, and it always shows you best, fastest, and cheapest option. This is not an ad, I really love it and I use it. So, depending where you fly from, you might need a connection flight. For example, when I fly to Slovakia, I always fly from Miami to either London or Warsaw, and then I take another flight to Košice, which is the closest airport to where I'm from. I know you don't want to spend a lot of money on the tickets, but I would urge you to make sure you find the trips that don't have too many connections. I always buy the trip that has maximum one connection simply because it is exhausting to travel for 36 hours. It's not worth those $200 that you're going to save. I would rather pay a little bit more but get there faster. The flight through the Atlantic is really exhausting. It can take from 7 to 12 hours, and you really do not want to have too many flights either before that or after that. So once you find the best connection flight, go to the particular airline's website to compare the prices. Sometimes the prices are better directly through the airline, and sometimes they're better through the app. When I was going to Miami for my first American vacation, I had my return ticket in about 30 days because I wanted to give myself enough time to explore not only Miami but also other cities. The prices of the tickets differ. I was able to buy one-way ticket for $300 but also for $1,000. So it really depends on the season and also how far in advance you buy your tickets. I've heard the best time to buy the tickets is either 2 months in advance or at least 5 months in advance. When it comes to packing, I feel like the more I travel, the more practical I can be. I used to carry a huge suitcase with me, a carry-on, a backpack, a fanny pack, only to realize that it is exhausting to carry all these things with me through all the airports. And at the end of the day, I barely used 50% of my stuff. So now when I travel, I usually only carry a personal item. And for my trip to Slovakia, for example, I already know what I need more or less, and also most of the things I need on a daily basis I already have in Slovakia. And I pack lightly for vacations as well. What I don't bring with me, I can always buy there. I don't want to return from my holidays exhausted from the heavy suitcase. So some of the non-negotiables to pack for me are AirPods to listen to the podcast, for example, as well as the headphones because some international airports airlines do not provide them. And so if you want to watch a movie and you cannot stick your headphones in, you're lost. Another important thing to have is either a small pillow or inflatable support around your neck, or maybe some fluffy scarf that can help to rest your head. Next, what I need is my glasses, my sleeping mask, my face mask. Even though we don't have to carry face mask anymore with us, it can be helpful when you have a stinky passenger next to you for a whole 8-hour flight. It did happen to me. Unfortunately, exactly when I didn't carry one, but more on that later. Another thing that you need is outlet adapter. I got mine from Amazon for around $20, and it has plugs for European, American, English, as well as Australian outlets, which it would have been helpful to have when I was flying from Dublin and my phone was dead and all the stores were closed for the night, and I had like 8-hour layovers. So I learned these things the hard way. Another thing is earplugs for sleeping. That can be helpful, but I usually use my AirPods for this purpose. Next thing I always carry with me is a compact toothbrush, toothpaste, because you need to refresh your mouth after the long flights. I also have travel size lip balm, deodorant, hand cream, some wipes, and napkins. Another useful thing is extra clothes. So for example, socks, t-shirt to change after some time, even extra pants if you, for example, spill water in your lap, as I did once. I love to have with me extra travel size blanket as well, or scarf for when you want to warm yourself up. Some airplanes can be really cold at times. And let's not forget about the charger for your phone. If you carry your iPad or laptop with you, then you're gonna need chargers for those as well. Do not forget to download your favorite movies and shows, because not all the airplanes have the entertainment included, and you do not want to be bored in case you're not able to fall asleep. You will also find useful to have an external charger for your phone, especially if your phone battery is not the best. What I wish I had known when I started traveling is the importance of the four-wheeler luggage. It's really important, especially for the long flights, that your carry-on and your luggage have four wheels and you're able to just push it instead of pull it through the airport. Another thing I would like to mention in regards to flight connections is layover time, because traveling through Europe is different than through Atlantic. You need to allow yourself at least 3 hours before your flight to America, because check-in lines and TSA checks can be really lengthy, especially in larger airports like London, for example. Sometimes there are trains and buses commuting through the airport, so be prepared to have that extra time to get on your plane before your gate closes. During your airport check-in, you will need to present your passport and your visa. When it comes to visa, they can ask you questions about your destination address or a contact person. When it comes to passport, it has to be valid at least 6 months after your planned return from the United States. So make sure you check your expiration date before anything else. Some airports, such as Dublin, for example, have US Customs, which means you should be there at least 4 hours before your flight, because in this case all passengers, which there's always many of them on international flights, all passengers go through the US Customs already in Dublin. And the advantage of it is that it saves you time once you land in America, and you can just get out of the airport, and that's nice after the lengthy flight. If you have a connecting flight in the US, be sure you have at least 3 hours layover, because, for example, if you fly to Miami through New York, you will need to go through the customs in New York, which means through the first airport of your US entry, not at your final airport. And the US customs line is usually really long, because each passenger has to go through that, and some international planes can fit over 500 people, so there's usually like an hour or 2 hour long wait in line. If your connecting flight is from a different airport, that will require even longer layover, so you should keep that in mind when you're buying the tickets. My first flight to Miami cost me $700, and the flight back was around $500, which was pretty reasonable since I had to take 2 flights each way. Some of the economic airlines that I know of are, for example, Norse or French Bee, at least for flights to Miami. If you want to fly cheap, you should plan ahead, because the closer the date, the more expensive the flights usually get. So keep in mind also that some of the cheaper airlines are not the most comfortable. They do not provide food or blankets or headphones, and you will have to purchase those on board, and that will add up to your total ticket cost. I was flying with British Airways, and it was a great first international flight for me. The plane seemed so big and the food was excellent. I honestly didn't even know there will be any free food, so that was an amazing surprise. I had a funny experience there, because the flight attendant served me the water as well as the glass of wine, and it fell into my lap with like the first turbulence. I recommend you to have extra pens in your hand luggage, because you never know when you end up totally wet on an 8-hour flight, and my whole seat was wet as well. So they were nice to provide me with a new seat, and there was no passenger next to me or behind me, so I could get super comfy. But I had to take off my pants in the restroom, and I spent my whole first international flight hiding under my two blankets. I got two blankets because I had two seats. I was drying my pants under the AC next to me on the passenger seat, so luckily they got dry until we landed. As I have mentioned before, I have a couple of funny stories when it comes to flights. One of them, the most recent one, is that I had a passenger next to me that smelled really bad, like sweat, like really, really bad. Like he was just running directly from the gym and he just barely caught this flight, and that's how bad it was. And unfortunately, I didn't have the mask on me, so I couldn't really like cover my face to not breathe it in. I used my scarf and the hoodie and everything I possibly could not to breathe it, and it was a tough flight because there was nowhere to run away from it, and I just turned myself away from him the whole time, like towards the window. I don't know if he got my message. And the best part of it was when he was sleeping, because he was not moving, but every time he moved, it was like this. It was so bad. I don't even want to tell you. Another experience I had was not very pleasant when I traveled through. It was from Madrid, and I didn't have my AirPods, and there was like this football club. It was like 12 to 14 years old boys who, like, it was a lot of them, and they were all behind me, and they were French, and they wouldn't shut up. They would talk throughout the whole trip. 8 hours, young kids yelling in French behind you. That was painful. I mean, French is nice, but not in this scenario. I also had a couple of experiences with like crying babies, which is also not ideal, but I love babies, so I forgive them. Last but not least, make sure your phone is charged once you land in America. Make sure you are able to connect to the airport Wi-Fi, because without an American number, I wasn't able to call or text anybody outside of the airport. And I'm not sure why, but I was lucky enough. On my first arrival to America, I wasn't even able to connect to Wi-Fi at the airport. So I struggled to get to my destination because I wasn't able to call an Uber. But I was able to, just wave on that yellow cab like I saw in the movies. Yeah, I did that. And I paid an overpriced cab, but I really didn't mind at that point, I was happy I was in my destination. So that's all from me for today. I hope this information was helpful and that you enjoyed today's episode. Feel free to subscribe to my podcast, leave a review, leave it a rate, give it a like, give it a comment. Anything will help this podcast grow. I appreciate you enormously. Thank you so much again, and I'm going to talk to you on the next one. Bye.